Welcome back to the Green Room Podcast. My name is Massimo Stefano. We are here live at the Franklin Theater in downtown Franklin, Tennessee.
That is in fact true.
It is true. Yeah, we're emphasizing the thing I just said. Yeah.
I'm just doubling down.
What's your name, stranger?
I'm Brendan. I am here. I work here at the theater, and I'm here on this podcast.
Nice shirt.
Thanks. I just went to see them on Tuesday. It was sick. Shout
Sunday.
out Chad.
Sunday.
Was it Sunday?
Today's Wednesday. So
it was Sunday.
But Sunday was his Tuesday.
I guess so.
And that's right. And that's great.
I guess so.
Shout out Chad for put Maddie and me on the guest list.
Yeah.
That was awesome. It was a great show. And also, never been to Marathon before. Great venue.
Yeah, Marathon
Great
Music
venue.
Works.
Great venue.
Huh.
It's still going.
It's still going.
What is it?
Oh, you go fix it. There's some sound in here. That's all. Well, today we have a wonderful, wonderful guest joining us. Actually, the father of someone that works here, and I know Brendan's been wanting to get you on for quite some time here. But anyway, so Brendan, if you want to introduce our guest here.
So we have a problem where we always read the bios, and I'm not a good reader. So
okay, but did you see what I did with Allison? Like,
I'm just warning you that I'm right here with you. You ready? All right. Our guest today has played in the studio or on tour with Face to Face, My Chemical Romance, The Offspring, Devo, Saves the Day, Alkaline Trio. They're awesome. Rob Halford, also awesome. Chris Shiflett. Is it Shiflett or Shiflett?
Shiflett's fine.
Shiflett. Okay.
I mean,
among others, now is running a drum studio called Imposter Syndrome, not drum.
That's nice.
Drum with a
nice.
U and the Motley Crue dots over top. I don't remember the name of it, but
the umlauts.
Umlaut, yeah.
yes,
That's sick.
And just making drum tracks and playing for people, and now releasing like drum packs with triggers and loops and stuff. Pete Parada, everybody.
Woohoo!
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for being here.
Yes.
How you doing,
my
Pete?
pleasure. I'm doing good.
Yeah?
I'm doing good. Yeah, it's fine. It's good to. I'm never backstage here.
Yeah.
I'm always out in the front watching shows. So
Yeah.
it's nice up here.
Yeah. It's a green room that's actually green.
I know.
I know, right? That's
We comment on
rare.
that surprisingly a lot about this green room being green. So.
Yes. I wonder, like, what in the whole, like, out of all the venues in the United States, what percentage of green rooms are actually green?
Oh, well, let me tell you.
Please. Honestly, you would have a good count, I think.
Yeah.
Well, most of the rock clubs and stuff, the walls are just covered with stickers and Sharpie, and so if there was a color, it's been
Long gone.
they're just repainted all the time. But this, you actually have a nice green. Like, it's not neon. It's not giving you a headache. It's like qualifies as green. Solid.
It's like gray if you're, like, not paying attention to it, but then you're like, oh, green.
It's like a duller winter green.
Nice.
Is that-
See,
that's a good
way to
calling
put
it the gray room is just not.
No. Yeah.
It's not hospitable.
The Gray Room podcast.
Yeah, it's like, oh, how sad are we today?
That sounds gross.
That's where you only talk to early 2000s emo artists, though.
I
Yes.
was just gonna say, if that's the show, we'll repaint the room.
Welcome back to the frown room.
That's so funny. I thank you for coming on.
Yeah, my
Appreciate
pleasure.
it. When I met Tigress, and who actually I live with, which is pretty cool. She was telling me about you, and I was like, "This guy is awesome. I need to meet this guy someday." And I wanted to ask you, because I was thinking about obviously this episode of what I wanted to speak to you about. My first question was like, when you were younger, was there a moment where like you were like, okay, it's music or die, or like when was that moment where you were like, okay, music is my thing, like my thing?
Easy. I mean, I'll back up a little bit, because when I was a kid, my dad was a band director, like a music teacher, right, for elementary through high school, and I had two older brothers, so I knew I was going to have to pick an instrument. And I'd always been like building drum sets out of random stuff that we had around the house, just annoying the crap out of my mom. And but when it came, like, I think it's like third grade or whatever, you got to pick your instrument. So I was like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to play drums, because I watched my older brother learn the clarinet, and I was like, I don't want to. That my other brother played the saxophone.
Yep.
I was like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So I thought I was pulling a fast one. Like, I'll just play drums. And notoriously, the drum section in any band, whether it's high school or professional or whatever, is always the screw offs. Like, we're not sitting still. We're not paying attention. We're not, Yeah.
As two former members of Drumline.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So,
Yes.
and my
Yes.
dad would agree. He was just like, "Yep, it's always the drummer." So, I was playing drums, and I didn't take it terribly seriously. I wasn't terribly good at it, and it was just kind of like something I did. And when I was about 15, a good friend of mine dragged me out to see like a local kids band, because I came from a really tiny town, about 1,000 people. My dad taught in the big town, 5 minutes away, that had 10,000 people in it.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So the band from that high school was playing a show, and I wasn't going to go. And my friend dragged me out to see it. And the drummer there was like, blew my mind. He was a year older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know if I've always just had like a mental block in my own head of, you're watching MTV, especially in the 80s, because I'm 51. So that's when I grew up, right? And I was just like, oh, I can never play like those guys, whatever. It's a pipe dream. Don't even try. And I show up, and here's this kid who's playing exactly like everybody who I saw on TV. And that was it. Like, whatever block I had in my brain, like, he removed it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I went home the next day and just started practicing, like, got serious and was just like, this is what I'm going to do. And that kid, his name was Mick Palmisano. And he was just, from that moment on, like, that was my idol. Like, and I come home to my dad, I'm like, you got a guy in your drum section named Mick? And he's like, oh yeah, he's a really good drummer. I'm like, why have you never told me about him? And my dad, to his credit, was pretty blunt. He's like, well, Mick's really serious about drumming, and he takes it seriously, and you don't. So I didn't know that it would register, that it would matter. And I was like, tough love. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
But so all of those things kind of happening at once really got my juices flowing to where after that it was just drumming. Like, everything else, it didn't care. Like, because before then I had no focus. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know. And when you're from a tiny town where there's more cows than people, it's not realistic to most people to dream a bigger dream of getting out of there and going and trying something else. So thankfully Mick moved to Hollywood a year before I graduated and started going to a school called Musicians Institute. And I was like, all right, since he was now my hero, I was like, I have to do everything that he does. So then I applied to the same school and got in. And so he had come back for the summer, and then we moved back to LA together. So I graduated in June of 91. And by the end of July, we were in Hollywood. Wow. And so I'm like barely 2 weeks after my 18th birthday, and going from Podunk to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And just,
what a time for LA also.
great.
crap in my
91
pants.
in LA.
Oh, dude. So I grew up on, Motley Crue, Metallica, like hair metal, like that. That's what I had. I was working it out. I had grown it out.
Yeah.
So we pull into Hollywood July 31st, 1991. About a week later, Nirvana drops Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Yeah.
And the entire LA scene imploded overnight. So it's like, I just show up all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, like, oh, this is going to be awesome. And then everything just crumbles around you. And it was like, all right, that should have been my first, hint that the music business was going to be unpredictable and sometimes downright demoralizing.
Yeah.
But so I went to school out there with my buddy, and just kind of, but that's where it started. That, like, everything stemmed from my friend dragging me to that show and having my life changed by watching this guy play. And to this day, Mick is still my biggest drumming influence. Like, he was the most creative. Like, he never played anything typical. Like, he always had to dig and find something more interesting to play. And he hit like a 400-pound gorilla, like, just absolute destruction. If you saw videos of him playing, just like cymbal stands falling over and people like putting him back up, just insane. So, just still to this day, still my favorite drummer.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Thinking about that time in LA too, as a Guns N' Roses fan, Use Your Illusion just came out. 1 and 2 just came out.
Yeah.
I've always thought about, like, when I was a kid and I became a fan of Guns N' Roses, like, what era would I want to be around? It's like after Appetite, before that, like in that 90. Gosh.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
It was cool. I remember I had to buy the Use Your Illusion on cassette, of course. I had to buy them like a week or two apart because I had enough money to buy one. and then I had to go back and buy the other
back to
one.
Tower and
Yeah,
get
you
the
had
other one.
to save
Yeah.
up another $8 at that point or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Hollywood was wild then because the scene didn't know what it was. All the hair metal guys were like cutting their hair and putting on flannel and tuning their guitars down, and it was like, okay, we're just chasing trends here.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. And but you would go to like the famous the Rainbow Bar and Grill on Sunset and stuff, and if you had a fake ID, which my oldest brother gave me his old driver's license because we looked pretty similar, but he was 5 years older than me. Like he had blue eyes, I had brown. Like didn't matter. They didn't care. But so we would go to the Rainbow, and there was this Miss Pac-Man machine next to the bar downstairs, and like I walked over and was like, "Oh, cool, I love that game." And they're like, "Don't sit there." Like the bartender's like, "That's Lemmy's seat." I'm like, "What?" So it was Lemmy from Motorhead.
Yeah.
His seat was reserved there. Like he came in every night. He played Miss Pac-Man. That was like Lemmy's seat. Don't sit there. It's his game. Leave it alone. And sure enough, like 10 minutes later, here comes Lemmy, comes in, sits down, starts playing. I was like, all right, I don't want to fight with Motorhead.
That's the last thing you need is beef with Lemmy.
Yeah, right. Like I want Lemmy to like me.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome.
So how long then did you live over there on the West Coast?
So I lived in LA from 91 till about 2005.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I went to music school there, and then while me and Mick were in school there, this other drummer who was a couple years older than us had graduated but had started teaching there, named Ray Luzier, who drums for Korn now and lives 10 minutes from me here in Franklin. But so we were blown away by Ray's playing then. We were like, I'd never seen anybody play with this much conviction. Like he just, every note, he felt it and he meant it.
Yeah.
And it was so exciting. So I got to be good friends with him. So I'm graduating from MI. Mick has moved in with his girlfriend and I need a new apartment. And Ray's like, oh, I need a roommate. So I move in with Ray for like 2 or 3 years. So it's funny. We still laugh about it 30 years later. We're like, God, we've been, went through the 94 earthquake together. And
Whoa, yeah.
yeah. But the nice thing is Ray, how you guys are drummers. You always have 5 or 6 different irons in the fire, right? Because you're waiting for something to take off. And so Ray was always busy and he would kick down gigs he didn't have time to me, and got my feet wet, got me up and running. That's around awesome. There. And yeah, so it, when we moved here in 2011, he called me up after we were here about a month, and he's like, hey, how's Nashville? And he was Mr. LA. I'm like, you're never going to leave LA. You'll never leave California. He's like, no, we're having kids. I want to get out of here. And he did. And for a while, he lived 5 minutes from us, and now it's 10. So it's cool. But
come on, dude.
I know. But yeah, it was funny. Just like all of these people, once we came here, and everyone was like starting to get out of California. And, because 2011 here, I don't know if you guys were here then, but it was super quiet, super dead, nothing going on. They had just grand opening of this theater after they did the refurbishing was we had come here to visit and see if we wanted to move here, and we were like, oh, we came downtown Franklin and they were having a big grand opening thing for the theater.
Crazy
and stuff,
that lined up.
What great timing.
Crazy, right? Yeah.
That's awesome.
I was actually around during that time. I'm from Florida originally, and I moved here when I was like 5. And I don't know exactly how this happened. I should really ask my parents, but I was in 4th grade, and they, for some reason, picked my choir I was in elementary school to sing on stage at the reopening in 2011.
No,
I didn't know this.
You didn't?
No.
I remember walking backstage with the blue lights, walking to the front, looking out and seeing everyone in cab and everyone just in tuxes and dresses. And there was some famous lady, blonde lady, I think, singing with us. And we were doing the thing, a doe, a deer, a female deer, or whatever that song is called. And we did that, and then they walked us back, and that was it. That was the day. But I remember being like, man, I want to party. Because I saw everything going on out front. I was like, what is this? And I didn't know. Yeah. And then a few years later, I was like, I feel like I was there. It was some crazy coincidence.
That's a weird, and now you worked here for
I
so
know.
long. And,
I know. I think about that a lot.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
But that move to Nashville, did you anticipate that becoming since 2005, I guess, because you lived here ever since 2005, then I'm assuming.
It's 2011. Yeah. So in 2005, I left
right.
LA and I moved up to Northern California. The band I was in called Saves the Day. The singer had met a girl on tour from Northern California, a town called Chico.
Okay.
And then they got married and he moved there. And we had come off a really difficult album cycle. Like we made this record that the fan base absolutely hated. And it was really difficult for all of us, but especially for the singer. And so he kind of moved there and turned his phone off. And the rest of us are like, well, we need to move forward. So the rest of us like temporarily relocated up there to drag a record out of him. And while I'm there, I met Tigress's mom and Tigress. And so, was just like, oh no, this is where I'm at now. This is what I want. So then I sold my place in LA, moved up there and was thinking, twofold, because we built our own studio at the singer's house. We made a record there and another EP. And it was like, okay, cool. We can do our own album. We can work at our own pace now. And I'll stay here and I'll keep everything together, which was just not possible to do. So, that kind of deteriorated and I ended up, leaving Saves the Day and kind of not wanting to do music at all, especially punk rock for a while. And then, Offspring gig came around and I turned it down 2 different times because I'm like, no, I'm done playing punk rock. I don't want this. And finally, the third time, came around, I was like, all right, well, let's go check it out.
Yeah.
And, but I wanted to play heavy metal at the time. Like I knew Korn was looking for a drummer at the time. And I was like, oh, I want that gig. And I got called from somebody at Sony and was like, yeah, we're dealing with this other band. It's a metal band. They might need a drummer. We can't tell you who it is. And I was like, is it Korn? and they're like,
tell me, I know.
They're like, no, we're not dealing with that. I'm like, all right, well, and then, so the other thing didn't work out. But so I go down to the Offspring audition and it was kind of like they're, usually when you go on an audition like that, like where they're seeing lots and lots of people, they just give you 2 songs. So they had one fast song and one like medium tempo song to see what you could pull off. And so I went and did those 2, the first week just on video camera with their manager, and then got called back to, like, okay, come play those songs with the band next week. And I come back the next week and then they're like, okay, great. Learn these 4 and come back again next week and play again. So I'm like, all right, they're seriously like taking their time finding somebody. And one day I go in and you're sitting and waiting and you listen to a lot of people play. And normally there's like someone who can really nail the fast stuff, but is real clunky on the slower tempos, or they're super solid at the slow stuff, but they're not equipped for the fast stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to this one guy and I'm like, oh, wow. Like, that totally solid on the slow song, and the fast song kicks in. I was like, oh, that's totally not his thing, but he's absolutely keeping up, no problem. And the door opens and it's Ray Luzier. And he sees me and he's laughing. He's like, oh, of course you're here. He's like, this isn't my thing. But I was like, oh, you sounded great. But then of course he gets the Korn gig, so but it was funny. And we still laughed. At the time we laugh about it because when we lived together, it was 94. And, the Offspring's big album broke and Korn's big album was right behind it and stuff. So it's like both these bands that we ended up in, we were like listening to that stuff when we lived together, 2 decades before at the time. And so it was, kind of funny how all that stuff worked out. But yeah, so once I got the Offspring gig, then we were kind of like, well, maybe we want to move back to LA and, get back closer to things. And then thankfully my wife, who's much smarter than I am, was like, it didn't go so well when you moved here to be closer to your band. She's like, if we're going to go somewhere, let's not move close to your new band. Like, let's have some space and do our own thing. And I was like, oh, that's probably smart. So we were like, well, where do you want to go? And I had a friend from high school who had moved here like 10 years before. And he's like, hey, come check out Nashville. Like, it's super chill. Taxes are low. Like, you can get more bang for your buck. And so I wanted to build a drum studio. So we came here, found a house with a basement in it with a nice space where I could do that. And was like, all right, well, let's go for it. Let's try something new. And moved, so yeah, I mean, Tigress was 7 at the time.
Wow.
And it was a good move for all of us because Franklin's lovely and the people here are all great. And, we had no idea the whole town was going to blow up 2 years later.
I was just thinking that. What a time to get in.
I was going to say,
Oh my gosh. I bet that house was so much cheaper.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, we lucked out. So I was like, all right, that was a good move at the right time. So
I mean, you moved here in 2020.
I moved here in 2020.
I moved here. My family moved here in 2006.
Okay.
So I guess along with you, I've seen the place kind of
Yeah.
blow up. I remember streets being smaller and buildings not being here. And
Yeah, the Batman building used to be the tallest building. Now
Yep.
it's just dwarfed by all the hotels.
Yeah.
And
Well, now they're putting in some new one that's going to be like 3 times the
I
height.
saw
or
that.
whatever.
Like how many stories was it? Like 60 or something?
I thought this was going to rival the Empire State Building.
Yeah, it's like tall. It's tall.
okay.
I guess whatever.
I mean,
Well, with the worst thing that I hate, this is not, I guess not a big thing, but when you're on 65, you're going north and it splits to 40, 440, whatever that is, like right at the Nashville.
Yeah.
They put those buildings right there, so you can't see now into downtown. It's just those 2 buildings blocking your view of the whole downtown.
That's all I've ever known.
I'm like, no, those used to not be there, and you could like see everything, and now it's like, oh, there's a big building here, and I can't see. It's the worst.
Yeah.
Whatever.
progress.
Yeah, whatever. Whatever.
When you got called, I guess, for that Offspring gig, were you initially like freaking out, anxious, or were you like, no, this is
No, I was
comfortable?
Could not have been less interested. It didn't.
Yeah.
I did. I wanted nothing to do with it.
Crazy.
Just because I'd come off of, I was in Face to Face for 7 years, and then in the last 2 years I was in that band. I was also in Saves the Day, and so it was a lot of like I was never home. I was always on tour, and then so when the Saves the Day situation deteriorated to where I was like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. I didn't want to play music at all.
Wow.
Like I was just done, and looked at my wife and I was like, I'm done. Like I'm going to go find something else to do. Like I can't deal with giant egos and personalities and stuff anymore. I just don't want it. Like it was such a difficult experience. And thankfully she's smart. She's like, yeah, calm down. Like take a couple months off. But so, pretty quick, once the word got out that I was, had left that gig, then I got some calls for some different things. And one of them was the Offspring gig. And I was like, no, I'm not doing punk rock. And the other one was this metal band. And I was like, oh, I'm interested in that. And so I kind of chased that down a little bit. And thankfully my best friend, who's a superstar guitar tech to, Prince and Angus Young and everybody.
Yeah.
He knows everybody in the industry. And so at the time he's like, hey, I heard you're, thinking of going out for so-and-so's gig. And I was like, oh yeah. He's like, absolutely not. He's like, you left a crazy, difficult situation. That situation is insane. He's like, steer clear. Don't. And I'm glad that it was nice to have that information because, I know the guy that ended up taking that gig, and then the band did nothing for almost 10 years and he was just kind of stuck there, had taken so much retainer that he couldn't leave, but they weren't doing anything and he was just stagnating. So I was like, wow, I'm really glad I had an inside line to avoid that one. And so yeah, the Offspring thing came around again and I was like, nope, not playing punk rock. I'm done with it. And because I didn't grow up on punk rock, like I grew up on heavy metal and hard rock and stuff. So, when I got the Face to Face gig, they just happened to be looking for a rock drummer who could also pull off the faster stuff. And I was like, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
So I fell into punk rock. I don't have a history with it. I'm not like a historian about any of it. I'm just like, oh, I like this. I don't like that, whatever. So I was kind of over the punk rock thing, but it came around again. And by the third time it came around, my name was given to their management by a really close friend in the industry who I respected. And, so at that point, my wife was like, hey, why don't you just go check it out? She's like, go get the job and then decide if you want it or not. And I was like, all right, fine. So, went down and they were leaving no stone unturned. I mean, it was a cattle call. There was people from all over the place every time that I went down, and I'm flying down every week from, basically Sacramento to LA.
Yeah.
And, so I had 4 different auditions with them till I got the gig. So they were really, I appreciated that they were taking their time and trying to find somebody. Like they don't want to do this again and again and again. And, for a long time that worked out and, ended up, I'd never been in that situation before either, where I was kind of brought in as more of like a hired person, side man. Everything else, Face to Face, Saves the Day, I was always like a member of the band. And so this was my first experience with that side of the world. And it's just a different animal, to navigate. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of how all that came about. But we didn't want to raise the girls in LA, and we didn't want to be that close to my band. So we came here.
Yeah.
And, you know, we didn't really know too many people, but it was like, hey, let's go on an adventure. Let's see what happens.
Great.
You know what I'm curious about with those, auditions, rehearsals? And I was thinking about this earlier today. How like produced were they? Was it just in a garage, no mics in the drums, or was it like in a studio with headphones and the whole night? Like, I'm so curious how produced the auditions were.
These were just at a rehearsal studio. The first one was just at some dumpy studio in Hollywood. And like I said, the manager was sitting there with a clipboard and a video camera, and they played the 2 songs through the PA, and you just played along. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, come to find out later, you know, after I did my audition and left, he got up and, you know, went outside and called the singer, was like, I found him. Like, you know,
that's awesome.
Which is cool. And then, you know, 3 more times, you know, when I went down to play with the band, the next 3, it was at just a different rehearsal studio, you know, but yeah, stuff was mic'd up. But, I mean, it's a house kit. You're not in there going, let me take an hour and really dial this in. It's just sit down, make the best of it. You know, they just want to get a feel for how it's going. Yeah. And, you know, but those kinds of auditions can be hard. Like when I auditioned for Face to Face, they were doing the same thing. Like there was about 60 guys that went in before me, and I just happened to be the kid at the rehearsal studio, parking cars and cleaning toilets and whatever. But a buddy of mine had tour managed them, and he's like, hey, I'm going to get you on the list to audition. And I was like, I don't play punk rock. And he's like, yeah, they don't want a punk drummer. They want a rock drummer. You're going to be great. So I got to listen to all these other drummers come in and play the one fast song and the medium tempo song, and just kind of watch the band go through it. And, you know, when somebody was really not cutting it on one song, maybe that's the only song you get, right? And you move it along. So by the time I get in there, they look like they were so burnt out. I mean, it had been all week long of playing these same 2 songs. Yeah. And I didn't know anything about their band, so I had gone into their room, since I had keys to the whole building, stole their live CD out of their merch box and learned the whole thing, just to kind of get a feel for like, oh, what is this music? Is this something I should be doing? So when I went in there, I was like, are you guys tired of playing these 2 songs? Because they looked at me like, oh crap, now we're down to the kid that parks the cars and cleans the toilets, right? And they were like, oh, what do you know? I was like, oh, I know your whole live record. And then they just busted into some different songs, and their energy came up, like they were enthusiastic again. And so, but that's the kind of stuff when you're going on auditions. Like if you're over prepared and you've learned more than the material that they need, then you've got a leg up on everybody. And the fact that I sat there all week and listened to everyone else's auditions, and, you know, the guy with the freshly colored mohawk that with purple dye down his face after 2 songs coming out, you know, and you're just like, you get an idea of what they're looking for and what they're not. But I mean, any little advantage is, you know, especially in this industry, you got to take it, you know.
There's so many great videos and stuff of, like, famously Rob from Metallica, when he auditioned, went in and played Battery with his fingers. Yeah. And they were like, dude, you know what I mean? and even Slash wrote in his book about how when he auditioned for Poison, and it's like in the room waiting, he passed, I forget his name, the guy that got it. But then he was wearing like moccasins, ripped jeans, and like a band shirt. Everyone else is all glammed up, makeup. And he walked in and was like, I'm not getting this.
Dude, they had the Guns N' Roses and Poison had a big rivalry. Like they did not like each other in the late 80s. It was got contentious there, you know.
No idea.
They were pulling their earrings out, coming to blows. You know?
Stepping away from his clear drum kit.
That's hilarious. So I had no idea he auditioned for Poison.
Yeah. Well, and Slash had his top hat, and then magically the guy at CC from Poison started wearing a top hat, and then it was like, oh, we can't both wear top hats. You know?
So. And then you get into the 2000s where Axl's got dreads and DJ Ashba's wearing a top hat.
Yeah. And then Buckethead's got a chicken bucket on his head, and you know,
dude. You
need to get into the Guns lore.
Well, I grew up listening to like classic rock. Like, if you can't tell by the shirt I'm wearing, I'm a big Journey fan, and I do all that stuff. But so he's been educating me on like punk rock,
everything from Deftones to Guns to whatever,
anything modern. Yeah. So Do we want to get into the song of the week here?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, we usually, when it's just the solo episode with just us, we kind of pick a song one of us is vibing to for that, just something like a gut reaction. It's like, oh, this is the song I want to do. And we just kind of take a break here and play like 30 seconds of it. So when we have a guest, we let the guest pick the song. So just something.
Started springing on you.
Yeah, just
Dang,
like
yeah.
a song
Thanks
you've been
for that.
vibing to recently or something you want to share with everyone that's listening.
It doesn't have to be new, but it could be. It could
Yeah,
be
something you
literally
played
just
on. It can be whatever. It can be whatever. It can be whatever.
Yeah, it's what do I like? My kids are always, turning me on to stuff that they like when they're younger, and I'll try to, when they were younger, I would only put on like the '90s station in the car for them because of everything now is so perfected and auto tune and whatever.
Yes.
I was like, now listen to stuff where the beat's messy and the vocals aren't perfect. Like don't
no
train
click.
your ear to hear perfect. Yeah, it was like before everything got quantized and perfected and stuff. So I'm tempted to pick something from back then, but I will pick something obscure just to
Do it.
One of my favorite bands that I finally got to take out on tour with us, the last real tour I did with Offspring, is this band from England called Dinosaur Pileup. And they have so many good songs, but I would say Peninsula by Dinosaur Pileup is something to check out. It's super catchy. They're just this 3-piece from, I believe they're from Manchester, and just the raddest dudes. And
awesome.
they were fun to have on tour. And they just write killer songs, really heavy guitar riffs. So it's cool stuff.
I'm in. That.
I'm in.
Yeah. This song's a little poppier. So I would say Peninsula is their catchiest song, but Backfoot has the heaviest guitar riff of theirs.
Awesome.
I'd say play something by them.
Yeah.
Okay,
Those guys
okay.
are cool.
So here is Dinosaur Pileup Peninsula. Here we go.
Yeah.
We used to have a third camera, like a Canon, like an actual camera.
Right.
And the reason we added that stop there is because it would, after 30 minutes, it would stop recording.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we were just like, oh, we need a natural break, so let's just do the music thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then I was like, because I edit all this, I'm like, why do we need 3 cameras because it was just the two of us. We'd do himself, myself, and then the wide would be that camera. I'm like, do we need all this? Do I need to do all
It's
this?
two
Is it
audio
okay?
guys trying to do an audio visual thing.
Yeah.
So it's
It's trial and error though.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. The first few episodes looked like crap.
Yeah.
yeah, the first, I think episode 6 isn't out there because there was such a bad ground hum that we couldn't get
Oh,
it to go
something
away.
like
So we
that.
just axed the
It was
episode.
bad. It was bad.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, well we'll get back in, and
Yes.
you want to bring us back in?
Another clap.
No, just
Oh, okay. Yes.
You're in it now too, so step it up.
I know.
You're on
oh
camera.
no, yeah, Brendan's in the shot now.
I
I can't believe.
I hope my knees looked good.
No, it was like half your body like this way. Like
Oh,
it was,
Nice.
okay. Well,
That's just style.
yeah, it's artsy. Yeah. My
Sure.
half of the screen will be black and white and I'll be cut off. It'll be like a thing,
As the one who'll be video editing this, no.
When I was a kid, Iron Maiden, they're still massive, but they were massive, and their singer Bruce Dickinson famously on tour one day, he had a beard at the time, and right before they went on stage, he just shaved half his face and went out and did this show and was like, I'm so cutting edge and cool. It's like, you have half a beard.
No, it's just like, what's going on, dude?
But yeah, it was really famous, and they took a bunch of pictures of it and stuff.
That's
but
awesome.
yeah,
Jeez.
I still remember it 40 years later.
Yeah.
But, so that's it. You're just channeling 80s
Yeah,
that's
Iron
right.
Maiden.
Yes, I'm channeling my Iron Maiden. I'm channeling my tool of not being center stage or looking at the audience. I am just here.
Hanging in the
shot.
back.
Yes.
Halfway in the shot.
Yes. So I'm curious. You just started the. I want to make sure I say it properly. Where my paper go?
Oh,
The imposter syndrome website, right? Or it's your producer name.
Syndrome.
Syndrome, not drone.
Come on,
Oh
man.
man.
Drum with the what's it called? You said it earlier.
The umlauts.
The umlauts. Yes.
The 2 dots.
Yeah. And I'm curious how that started and kind of what your vision was with it initially versus how it's blossomed into what it is now.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, when we moved here, like I said, my big thing was, all right, I want a house with a basement so we can put a drum studio in. Because at the time, my plan was to teach drums online and have like an online subscription service and come in and do lessons. And the guy that started all that, this guy Mike Johnston, he's from
I follow Mike.
Yeah, Mike's great.
So cool.
So he lives in Northern California.
Yeah.
So it was like he lived like an hour and a half from me. So I would go down and take lessons from him before we moved here and kind of pick his brain about it. And I'd be like, yeah, I kind of want to do the same thing you're doing. We're just this house in Nashville. And he's like, oh, that's great. He's like, you're going to have to stop touring if this is what you want to do. And I was like, no, I can work around it. Like, it's totally cool. And I go in Nashville, there's so many great drummers. Like people can come in and fill in for me when I'm gone. And bless his heart, he was just like, yeah, okay. Let me know how that goes. And so just even the technical aspects of getting that up and running I think I spent, because as you're doing a podcast, trial and error, you figure out what works and what doesn't, whatever. And, when you're running video footage and audio, like the audio runs faster than the video, right? So I had to figure out a way to delay the audio to line up with the video. And like, it was such a nightmare even to get that up and running and then to try to build a website for it. And then I'd be like, oh, and then I got to go on tour for 3 months. And I'd come back and go, I don't remember where I left off. Let's start over. And so, he was right. I was like, okay, I can't do this and tour. So, but we had the studio. So I started recording drum tracks for people. And, so, over the last few years, trying to do something a little different than just being on tour all the time, having the studio there was kind of a lifeline for me to, keep making money doing music, but finding new ways to do it. So one of the things I do is I make sound packs for this company called Splice. And so it's like drum loops and single hits and stuff. And so people can go in and have my drumming and drop it right into their files. And, it's like having me play on your song, but it's only 1 credit to go get that loop, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And or if you like my drum sounds, you can build your own MIDI kit with my sounds and go and do that. So that's been really cool. I've got 4 sound packs out with them. And, that's been a nice thing to do where I can just work from home, do it myself. And it's a lot of condensed work. It's intense. And then when it's done, it's just done. So, so I do that. I do a lot of drum recording for people. And so the studio, at the time it was built for one purpose, but now it's kind of, much more than that. So,
totally.
So I do composing for film and TV and stuff in there. So like every day I get up and I go down and work in the studio. And I'm like, oh, this is my happy place. This is why we came here. This is this is what it's for. But it took a decade of figuring out, why did we do this? Oh, this is why we did this. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's been really great,
awesome.
So yeah, I do drum tracks for all different kinds of people and work on my own music, work on music with my daughters, and it's a cool setup.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's sick. So no road life right now.
Oh no, I'm back on tour too. So that was.
I was gonna say, because it sounds like you're just so busy at home, which is great. But
yeah, it's good to be busy at home. No, so I tour with the last couple of years, I put a band together with these other guys called the Defiant. So it's myself, it's Greg Camp, who wrote all the Smash Mouth songs on guitar, Dickie Barrett from the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones is the vocalist, Johnny Rio from the Street Dogs on bass, and Joey LaRocca from the Briggs on guitar. So we put out a record about a year ago, and we've been out doing shows, and we did a month-long tour back in April with Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. We just were playing in Boston this past weekend on the NoFX farewell tour at that. And so I'd been touring with them, and for the last year and a half, I've been playing with this band, The Bronx, as well, filling in for their drummer, Joey Castillo, who's been out with the Circle Jerks. So it's just like everybody hops in and helps out and does what they can. And then later this month, I'm playing at Louder Than Life in Kentucky with this band Damnage, which is a new group with Tim Stewart, who plays guitar for Lady Gaga and Rihanna and on The Voice and all that stuff. It's him and his buddy Johnny Good have this punk rock project where they get to just kind of dig in and blow off steam away from their regular normal gigging. So so it's busy kind of juggling a lot of projects between the studio and being on the road and stuff. But I try not to be on the road as much if I can avoid it, but if I can just wake up and work from home, I'm happy.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, the road's just a little cherry on top.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, all right, like I had a realization on this tour in April. It was like, we're back through House of Blues and all this stuff. And I was like, I've been playing these clubs for 30 years. And I was like, everything hurts now.
Load is much longer than
it used to be. Yeah. It's like, all right, maybe. Yeah. So, you kind of look at things a little differently at that point, but
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. What are some of your favorite venues you've played in? Because obviously you've played in so many different varieties, from shows of the Offspring and giant arenas or amphitheaters or whatever, versus, rock clubs. But sometimes rock clubs have the best charm. You know what I mean? There's a charm to a club with band stickers everywhere, and it kind of doesn't smell the greatest.
Yeah.
But there's something to it. Like the Cobra here, I love being at the Cobra. It just
really
this energy. You know what I mean? So I'm just curious, what are some of your favorite venues, regardless of size?
Yeah, sometimes the dumpy clubs are the best ones. I always had a soft spot for the House of Blues in Hollywood, because Face to Face would do like 3-4 nights there. That was our hometown, and so we filmed a whole live concert there on our farewell tour, and so that place kind of is near and dear to my heart. When I first started playing in Hollywood, you play like the Coconut Teaser and the Whiskey and all these famous clubs that you're like, oh man, Guns N' Roses was there. And then like you get there and you have to play this drum set at the Coconut Teaser was just the biggest hunk of crap that you've ever seen. And it like everything was broken on it. And if you complained, the owner would say, "Oh, it was good enough for Guns N' Roses," and it's like, it looks like it's been here since their grandparents were alive. Like it just, but so you roll with it. But I don't know if I have favorite venues, because a lot of times you go through a town and one time you're playing at this club and then the next time you're over here or at this amphitheater or whatever, so sometimes you don't play the same place a lot. But I like particular cities. Like I always like going to Chicago. Whenever I'm there, I'll go and walk around, and just because the archecture there is stunning.
Chicago's a great looking city.
Yeah, you don't see it like anywhere else. And then I'm a super nerd too, so one year we had a day off there, and this is before you could have maps on your phone and whatever. So I'm like using MapQuest on my computer and writing out my own walking tour of all the locations where they shot The Dark Knight, and going and taking pictures and
so cool.
and nerding out. So probably walked like 10 miles that day around the city, like with my little hand scribbled notes of like, oh, over here's the post office where they filmed the opening. Oh yeah, cool. Like
that's so cool.
It was cool. So
that's awesome.
I'm sure everybody else be like, that's what you did with your day, huh? But I'm like, no, it was awesome. Yeah.
I think it's awesome.
No, that's great.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too, because if you think about it, you've been playing all these clubs for 30 years, but you also played it in the time where it's been transitioning from wedges and amps to ears and sims. And
at one point.
I have to ask almost everybody about it. I'm just curious, obviously, because you've gone through the cycle of the transition. Is what is your opinion on the ears versus wedges thing, and drum layering samples and stuff? And
I'm not a fan of sampling drums live. Like you play well, your drums should sound good. The sound guy should be able to make them sound good. I understand for like metal gigs and stuff, like they're going for precision and they need that thing to cut through.
Yeah,
I've never had good luck with triggers and stuff. Like they'll misfire. It just kind of bums me out whenever anybody wants to do that. And I was on in-ears for the longest time with Saves the Day. We had our own little monitor rig, and we would bring in-ears, and then Offspring had a whole, I'm playing along to a click because it's all lined up with lights and,
Time-coded.
Yeah. So, and that was kind of like, at first was like, okay, cool. But after a while, you're like, ding, 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 ding in your head all night. And you're just like, oh my God, this is destroying me. And it actually, over time, it made me lazy on the click, which, I've found in the last couple of years as I'm doing more recording in my studio, I'll be like, oh man, hold on. Let me snap back on the beat here, because you're so every night playing the same set over and over, and it just kind of, fades into the background. So I had got a little loose around the click where I've tightened that back up. But so and then now when I'm touring with the Bronx or the Defiant, like, we're not carrying in-ears, we're not running any of that. And so I just have my molded earplugs in with the filters, and I love that even more. I just like the feel of a band playing together with no tracks, no nonsense, none of the stuff that Milli Vanilli got run out of town for that everyone just does now. But even when I played with Devo, that was cool because half of their show was on a click and it was lined up with their video screens, and it was very specific. Like, their show started with 5 songs in a row that was all one track. So once the intro started, even with changing some outfits in between songs, the first 5 songs were one long thing where, the song would end, there's something happening on the video screens, I hear the count in, the next song goes, right? Yeah. But I liked that also half of their set was just free.
We're playing.
And that was one of the things when I got called by them, the bass player was like, can you play to a click? Yeah. He's like, can you play without it? Yeah. And he's like, all right. Cause it's a different thing. Like, there's a reason why, especially here in Nashville, like, there's guys that do the studio work and there's guys that go on tour. Yeah. And it's a different world, where in the rock world, typically if you're in the band, you're in the studio, you're on the road, like it's a different kind of thing. But, some guys get caught up with the click and then they don't know who they are without it. And so it's nice to be able to do both. And it's nicer for me to not be doing something that is dependent on it, because I just feel like you have more connection with the audience when you have room for spontaneity. Like, face to face, we were interacting with the crowd the whole show. Like, it was just very energetic and back and forth. And we had a standing thing in the band. If somebody jumped up on stage, and then we would just stop and be like, all right, what do you need? Like, you got up here. It must be really important. Like, what do you want? And they're just like with a deer in the headlights. And sometimes they would just jump back in the crowd and we'll just pick up where we left off. And sometimes we would put them in the penalty box, which meant they had to sit on the front of my drum riser with their head like this far from my snare drum.
No way.
Yeah. Cracking rim shots the whole time.
Yeah. And we had no way to enforce it. They just either they went along with it or they didn't. But to be able to do that kind of stuff and to feel a moment with the audience and stretch out the song if you're playing to this because you got backing tracks, and it's just to me, if I wanted to hear your album, I could stay home and listen to your album. If I come to see you play live, I'd like a performance. I don't mind if you mix up the arrangement a little bit, maybe play it a little different. Like, give me something I can't get at home, because it's so expensive to go to a show now. Like, make it worth the audience's while. And if you can't interact with them, if you can't have that spontaneity, then like, that's not rock and roll. Like, so I love, Matt, the singer from the Bronx, we have a section where he gets out into the crowd every night. Like, he's got like a 50-foot mic cable and he's out there and he's interacting and he's, firing people up, and he stays out there for 2 songs. That's awesome. And it's like the best moment of the night. We were out with, cause the Bronx is pretty aggressive punk rock, but we were out with Flogging Molly last year, which is, Irish punk and still aggressive. But we would come out on stage and, like, people would be like, what the hell is this? And every night, like after about the second or third song, he would talk to the crowd and be like, hey, I see a lot of horrified, scared faces out there. I just want you to know it's going to be okay. Like, we're all going to get through it. Like, if Flogging Molly can love the Bronx, you can love the Bronx. And every night, it just like gave people permission to be like, oh, all right, I'm going to take in something new. I'm going to have a good time. But if you're just, your whole show is running and you don't have any room to interact like that, you can't make that connection. You can't bring that in to where and then how do you win them over if all you're doing is pelting them with your songs?
Yep.
Like there should be more of a connection there. So
Totally. I agree.
and I think the in-ear monitor crutch it does separate you from the crowd.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like if a guitar player wants to yell at the drummer. If you don't have a talk back and you don't see him, you don't hear it. You know what I mean? If you're in ears, at least, you know what I mean?
Yeah. One thing I always do when I'm playing, especially if it's like a quieter bit and I'm like barely tapping it because that's just whatever it is, I'll pop in ears. I'm like, I need to hear it. No matter how much I have in here, I'm like, I just want to hear it because it's right in front of me. I don't need this whole cabling system to tell me what's right in front of me. I need to hear it and be able to feel the touch of the drum, what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know, even when I'm using them, I'm like, I'm half using them still because I'm like, if I can still pick up what's around me, it's like, that's gold.
Yeah, and you get separated too. Like I was in a band one time where, I felt like me and the bass player weren't locking in, and I was like, what's going on here? And I finally one day at sound check, I went over to the monitor guy and I was like, give me his mix. And when we played the next song, and it was just bass.
Yeah.
It was just himself, no vocals, no drums. And I was like, hey, buddy, listen. I was like, you're on your most selfish adventure right now. I get it. You don't want to listen to everybody, but if you're not listening to me, I don't know how we're supposed to work together. And after that, now we dialed him up a nice mix. He's got plenty of drums. And then we had the best time together because he would do something little and I could respond to it. And I'd see him like grinning, like, all right, cool. Now we're communicating. Now we're having a conversation. But yeah, you're just like, what is wrong here? And then it's just bass. Just I'm like, you're just in your own world over there. Like couldn't care any less. But
That's crazy.
That's hilarious.
That's so funny.
I know a guy that would do that. That's funny. I think George would do that.
Probably.
I feel like George would do that.
I hate hearing just myself in my.
No.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
I actually ask for as little drums as possible, just enough to forget me to get away with, so it's not weird for the plugging my ears up. But
as long as I can feel the kick drum or have some sort of thump, I'm good. When I can't hear that, and then I have to overdo it and again, take it back to the beginning. My friend Mick back in the day hits super hard and he's watching me do it and he's like, all right, cool. Well, now you've gone past where now you're hitting so hard, you're choking the drums off. It's like, you still got to pull the sound out. So like you can only hit stuff so hard. It's not going to get any louder. So me stomping on the kick drum, it's already loud. If if the wedge isn't pumping, there's nothing you can do about it, and just try to relax and sit through it. And,
so do you like to have a drum sub then as you're playing?
Yeah, I mean, you can't always count on it, but I have one of those like thumper seats, but it's I can't always take them like on fly dates and stuff. I didn't bring this, so you're just at the mercy of whatever's there.
I think I saw a thing where you like wear like a vest or
There's
something.
some bands that wearing the vests.
And like,
that sounds weird.
Like it's, I don't know if I would even want to try that, but
I forgot one of the bands I think that opened for Metallica last year on their run was wearing them, but they like look stylish, so it doesn't look like you're wearing like a bulletproof
you
vest.
Can feel it.
But it's like a thumper, and it's interesting.
I when the thumpers first came out, I know some drummers that got carried away with it, and I'm just gonna get kind of gross, but they were like, "Hey, don't set your thumper too hard. I'm having issues now." Like it turned their like gave them like IBS and stuff. They're like, So I was like,
that's awesome.
Good to know.
That's awesome.
So it's like, let's keep it tolerable, and if I can't hear it, I can't hear it. But I don't want to get sick over it.
Well, if we crank the subs up too much here, I mean, the subs are below the stage here, so everyone's if it's too much,
you can't run away from it. Yeah. I'm curious, actually, kind of speaking on that, is how do you stay agile through all these years of playing? Because you're playing, whether it's Offspring or like, you know what I mean? That's some fast music. It's some, compared to some other stuff that, people get worn out after a couple weeks, let alone a couple years. So how do you keep like it up?
I want to tag onto that. Ergonomically, how has your kit changed over the years to accommodate physically what you have to do?
Yeah. All right. Those are, meshed together, that idea. For me, it was a lot of when I first started doing punk rock with Face to Face, I was like, oh my God, like my first show with them, we played this little club in Phoenix in the height of summer. And it was like held 200 people. They crammed 300 people in and just closed the doors. There's no air. It's 120 outside. You had to fight through the crowd to get to the stage. And we're playing like 25 songs. And I'm like completely stupid, came out swinging so hard. And by like the third song, I was like, oh my God, I'm huffing and puffing. I'm dying. I'm not going to get through this set. Yeah. And by the end of the show, I was like turning green. And thankfully we had this song that the first half of the song was just this really long build on the toms. And I just leaned over and threw up all over. And then I felt fine and I could finish the set. But that was my first show with them. And I remember that night I was like, whole body was broken. I'm dying. And I'm like, I can't do this. I'm gonna have to tell them tomorrow. Like, it just isn't gonna work out. And then, thankfully the next day was a drive day. We get to Austin. The next show was fine. Yeah. And at that point I learned, it was like, okay, you've got to kind of burn in your muscles. You've got to break in your body, let it recover, and then coast. But at the time I was wrapping my sticks with tape and ripping my hands up. And once I loosened my grip and was like, okay, I can hit just as hard, but I don't have to punish myself with, it doesn't have to be harder than it already is. Like, it's a very physical job to do these gigs and the tempos. And sometimes the fast tempos everybody thinks are harder, but you have so much more room to swing on the slow stuff. So, some songs I would have welts on my back because I would swing back so far that sticks were hitting me in the back coming forward. And, but once you loosen up your grip, like I stopped breaking so many cymbals. I wasn't breaking sticks so fast because you're letting the motion handle the volume, and then all of the tension and the rebound and stuff can flow through you without getting stuck somewhere and, hurting your wrists or hurting your arms. And I warm up a lot. Like, I'll start warming up for a show at least an hour before we play and make sure that, my hands aren't going to cramp up, because there's nothing worse than you get up there and your forearm cramps and then you're just holding it like a baseball bat, just trying to get through. And that's the worst feeling. So I'm so paranoid about that I warm up, and I'll talk to guys, and they'll be like, oh, I don't warm up. I'm like, I don't even know how you can do that. It blows my mind when someone doesn't have to. Because for me, and it's part of the mental thing too, like changing to my show clothes. All right, I'm getting into character now. I'm going to warm up. I'm going to be, you get into your routine and your pattern. And so for me, it's a mental thing too. You're building up to, I've got 60 minutes till the show. Now it's time to do this. Okay, now it's 5 minutes till the show. I'm hopping up and down. I'm getting my heart rate up. I'm, going to hit the ground running. Yeah. But it can be hard. Like, if I take a couple weeks off from playing drums, when I sit back down to play again, it hurts. And I have a day where, you have that lucky day where you're excited to play again and you're getting ideas flowing and you're like, oh, this is awesome. And then I'll have that day and I know the next day is going to be terrible, but I still have to show up and do it. And even though I know it's going to be awful, because that's part of the process, so by the third and fourth day now, my coordination is coming back. My muscle memory is coming back, but you got to get through a couple really awful days. Like, I went through this 2 weeks ago. I played a show with the Bronx in July, and then I've just been composing the score for this movie. So I've just been working on that and haven't been playing drums. And I'm like, all right, I got to get back to drumming. And had one good day and one day where it was like nothing would work together. Like, embarrassing if anyone watched me play. But I sat and did 2 hours of that, and then the next day evened out. But so I think just if you're staying in motion, you're in motion, but it can be brutal. Like, I know guys that, one friend of mine, I went to see him play years ago, and then he came off stage and had like a busboy's bucket full of ice water, and he dropped his forearms in it and set an 8-minute timer on his phone. And he's like, I have to do this after we play. And I was like, or what? I know another guy that plays so hard. he brings space heaters on stage because he has to stay warm. So where the rest of us are like begging for an air conditioner and glad to have a fan, he's blowing stereo space heaters on himself to stay warm. And, when I did the My Chemical Romance gig, their drummer was really injured at the time and he had really bad carpal tunnel. And I'd known him because their tour where they blew up, was our face-to-face farewell tour and they were opening for us. So he couldn't play. They had a tour in Europe, so I went to fill in, and I was looking at his kit, and it was like giant cymbals all cranked down, and his toms are all really high and flat. And I was like, dude, you are doing everything you can to hurt yourself. Yeah. Like trying to talk him through, and he's like, yeah, but it looks so cool. I'm like, but you can't play right now. Like that's not cool. So you got to take care of yourself when you're a drummer, especially on tour. It's hard to eat well. It's hard to get good sleep. And, so you got to find a way to keep your body from, messing up. Like touring when I was 25 felt very different than touring when I'm 50.
Yeah, totally.
Like,
yeah.
You get to the point, there's that meme that's like, the main thing I miss from childhood is my back not hurting. Like, but it's true. It's like, but to answer your question, like, how has my kit changed over the years? Mostly I think what changes for me is I'll adjust my seat height. And for a long time, it kept getting lower and lower and lower and lower because I'm all torso. I have little stubby legs. Like I'll sit on Ray from Korn's drums, and my feet barely reach the pedals because he sits really high, and then he sits on my kit, and he's like, "Oh my god!" Like my knees are in my chin. Yeah. But I've found there's usually a spot where my feet can float. Like I'm up on the balls of my feet. I'm not pushing from my thighs. Everything pushes from my toes up off of the pedals. And that's where your balance comes from, So if you're lifting your leg up really high off of the hi-hat pedal or whatever, now your balance is off and you're going to move. So for me, it's always trying to see, well, where's my back this week? How do I feel? Do I need to sit a little lower? Do I need to sit a little higher? To change that. But other than that, my kit's been, fairly similar for a long time. I look back, I found some old photos of me in the 90s playing with my metal band in LA. And I was like, how were my crash cymbals way up there?
Reaching for them.
No, it's like, hey, let's keep everything reachable here.
I love it. I love it. I like guys from the 70s that have like just an enormous kit and like just up. They're like, like it's like the complete opposite of now everyone's trying to do everything flat and like the minimalist like 4-piece kit with 3 cymbals. Like, but it's like, I don't know. I like the 70s thing too.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense though, because like you're probably doing some double kick and you don't want to be all left and right in your seat when you're trying to.
The throne height makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, and everything really is like where you're sitting. That's your balance, And the worst is when you get. It doesn't matter if you're carrying your own riser and whatever. You will end up on a stage sometime that's tilts forward, and standing on it, whatever, you wouldn't know the difference. But when you have to drum on it and you're moving forward, now your feet are holding you up. Now my balance is off because I should be off of my waist and my hips, and now I have to hold. So those nights are the worst. Whenever it's like, oh man, the stage is slanting forward, it just throws you off because your feet are now not just floating and playing; they're also load bearing. And so it's just makes it interesting, but it's not optimal.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
Before we get out of here, which this has been awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
I had to ask this question because I was thinking about it. How many times did you drop your stick during Separated trying to get from the hi-hat stand back over to... Like I would drop it every time. Every time it'd be.
Well, here's a fun story. I hated that part, so I've never played it on the hi-hat stand.
Oh, nice.
Yep,
Nice.
I always just clicked on the rack tom rim because the hi-hat stand itself is not mic'd, and we're playing amphitheaters or stadiums or big festivals or arenas and whatever. Even in a small club, no one's going to hear that. So I just was like, I'm just going to click it up here because at least the rack mic will pick it up, and it's the same idea. But yeah,
That's awesome.
that whole thing and hitting up into the hi-hat, it just felt so clunky to me every
Yeah.
time I ever tried to do it. And I was just like, oh, I'm just going to do it over here. And then nobody ever complained. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah.
Because I've always thought about it. Because like when I was younger, I heard that song. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go play it. I would go open-handed on it, and then I'd go to bring my hand back and just fall apart. Yeah.
The sound effects you're making right now are really great.
Thanks.
For the
I'll like blow them up, distort them and stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, Pete, this has been
Yes.
awesome.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me.
At the end of every episode with a guest, we always like to let them promo kind of whatever they want. This is the red carpet for them to showcase. I'd say where people can follow you. Just your moment to let our audience know what you got going on.
Oh, for sure.
So here you go.
Thanks. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram or Twitter, X, whatever it's called, just at Pete Parada. I'm not on Facebook. I can't handle it. I don't TikTok. But yeah, Instagram and Twitter. My website is just peteparada.com if you need drum tracks. You want to check out the sound packs, splice.com. If you search my name on there, it'll bring up all 4 packs and everything. Like you can just sift through. I mean, it's a fun library there. If you're looking for, I use it all the time. I'll be like, I need a loop for this song. It's this tempo, and here's, a million different options.
Yeah,
And,
I love Splice.
it's really cool. So yeah. Out on the road, I'll be at Riot Fest with the Defiant in Chicago later this month. I'll be at Louder Than Life in Louisville with Damnage. I'll be with the Bronx and Orlando and Las Vegas the middle of this month at some festivals. So just out and about all over the place. But yeah, come say hi. I'll be around.
Sick.
That's so
sick.
cool.
This podcast is unofficially sponsored by Splice.
There you go.
Yes, brought to you by Splice. Unofficially.
All right. Well, this has been the Green Room Podcast.
Yes.
You can follow us at Podcast The Green Room on Instagram, YouTube, all the things. You can follow me, Massimo D Music, Instagram, not Facebook anymore.
Facebook got hacked and deleted.
I have no idea. I emailed like 3 different emails the other day. I was like, let's just see if nothing. Anyway, don't have a Facebook anymore, so that's cool. That's fine. All my family that's on there, so sorry. You'll have to find another way to contact me. I got Musical Chairs just came out. The 4th episode just came out. I'm actually gonna put it in the description below. Actually no. Now that when they're seeing this, it's not just gonna come out.
Yeah.
We're
filming.
We're filming at a different time. We'll do it. But anyway,
Roxanne.
just follow on YouTube. We got some cool stuff coming up for the rest of the year. Massimo DeStefano over there. Okay, Brendan, take it.
BDen8 on Instagram. More Weight Band. We're potentially working on some acoustic stuff that might release at some point. So that's cool. That's it. Follow us on TikTok. Follow us on YouTube. Hopefully we'll have some other content here as we get into the holiday season. Obviously, season is ending, so hopefully we'll be able to give you some cool stuff through the holiday season. So
yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Pete,
Thank
again.
you. Yeah. Thank you, man. It was awesome.
We'll catch you guys next time.
Yes. Peace.
Ciao.